Hello there. This is part of a three-part series. This is the first part of videos dealing with ways to make it easier for you to decide what to focus on when you're having to take notes or highlight material so that you can study them later, either for classes or the the word I'm looking for is personal. So even for personal use, because sometimes you want to research things and you want to be able to go back and find the things that are important. But there are some pretty regular problems people run into. And I know, you're already saying, like, what? Now you're trying to say I can't use a highlighter? You think I'm too stupid to pick up a green marker and just down stuff, make it bright, make it colorful? Boom, I can find the stuff I need. That's not that hard. I'm not coming at you like that. Okay. I'm not trying to say that you don't know how to use the highlighter itself or that there are problems with dealing with that end. More of what I'm concerned with is a very common issue that comes down with both taking notes and highlighting things. And really, all of them boil down to the same issue, whether you're taking notes or you're highlighting stuff. The problem is that people have a tendency to do too much. They have so much, or they have it without any dedicated system of organization that works for them, that later on it doesn't fit the intended purpose. They can't go back through it and find the specific information they want to find easily because you have too much highlighted. That's usually the big problem. Or you wrote down a whole bunch of notes, but there's no clarity as far as what the focus of the notes are, things like that. So this is to help with those problems. Now, with any type of system, I don't have a set system anyways, but with any advice people give you, use the bits that work for you. Don't use the bits that don't work for you. Okay? These are things that have worked for me and in my teaching career have worked for students of mine. That does not mean it will necessarily work for you. But if there's anything in here that helps you, love it. I'm happy about that. So, all that stuff aside, my rambling, let's look at some general things. And that's going to be the focus of this video is general things that apply to both taking notes and to highlighting. First off, key is keep it simple. Okay? The goal for highlighting or for taking notes is about condensing information. It's about making it smaller. Really, you want to aim for at most 10% of the size of the original thing. And 10% is probably too much. If you think about any given text, any book that you've read, anything like that, if you're trying to read through 10% of that to find one specific thing, that's actually a pretty fair amount. Notes and highlights are about skimming. So you want to condense the information down as much as possible. You want to make it as easy to find the specific thing you want as you possibly can. So any chapter in a textbook or any specific lecture, you want to be able to summarize them down to 1 to at most 5 sentences. And 5 sentences is probably too much. But sometimes you get things that are information heavy. You should be able to give the main point of it in a single sentence. The tough part with this, though, is just figuring out what matters. So, let's talk some about ways to find out what matters with it. First off, ways to identify important information, because that's what you should be highlighting. That's what you should be writing down in your notes, is the important information, not everything. Okay? There's a lot of information they're given that are the proof of points that are being made, or is the evidence behind that backs it up. Those things are important. You need that to trust that the information you're being given is true. But with your notes, this is about recall. This is about finding the right information. You don't need all that stuff in there. You just need the main points. So how do we identify the main points? There are some ways you can go about that. First off, if you're using a text or even lectures, generally speaking, have a title to them. And so use that title, right? If the title is written well, it should tell you what the main focus is. If it's not written well, then you have whole other issues. But, do the best you can with this. In situations where like the best written texts and the best lectures from professors or teachers have it clearly stated what the goal of this chapter is, what the goal of this lecture is. And that is just directly telling you what to keep an eye out for in it. But if you don't have those, start off with using the title. Look for text clues or text cues. And this works just as well with live lectures, people just talking, as it does with things that are written on a page. Okay? Yes, when things are written on the page, look for stuff anything that's different. Okay? Anything that stands out as being something different than what they are normally doing. If they change the size of the text, especially if they make it bigger, they're saying this is important. If they change the font, things are always in Arial or block letters and all of a sudden it's in script, that information is probably important. Where it's placed on the page. If everything is like center justified and then there's one thing that's like way off to the side, it's trying to draw your attention to it. Okay? Anything that's placed in an unusual spot on the page, it's there for a reason. Also, biggest keys, look for bold, look for italics, look for quotation marks. Those are all super big signposts that are saying this thing is important here. We want you to look at this. So that's going to be important information. With lectures, size of text kind of equates to volume. If I'm talking like this, and then I happen to mention you want to look at this thing over here, well, I'm being louder for a reason. I'm trying to get your attention. Sometimes it may go the other direction where I get really soft because I want you leaning in and paying attention to what I say and just shh, because right here is what matters, right? Volume changes your attention. Those times that there are those changes like that, probably a good cue that something important's happening. Same thing with, when people talk differently. If they're running through things really quickly and they're speeding through, and all of a sudden they're stopping and slowing down, and they are making a point to be very deliberate on what they say, that's important. And then, bold, italics, or quotation marks, that's the equivalent, like if they're writing stuff on the board behind them. If they're doing a PowerPoint and they're putting stuff up, as long as they're not one of those people that just writes everything on their flipping PowerPoint. God, that's annoying. But anyways, any of those kind of things are cues that this is important information. We also want to look for repetition. If somebody repeats something, they're doing it because they want you to remember it. Anytime that people say the same kind of thing over and over again, they're trying to make a point that they want to stick in your head, because repetition does help people remember the things. Like I just did there, where I was like so witty and having the cues in, say ha ha ha. I repeat 3 times to draw attention to the fact that I'm talking about repetition and that matters. You get it. Is it tied to the primary focus of the lesson? Again, if you are dealing with a good teacher, if you are dealing with a good professor, if you are dealing with a well put together text, it should make it very clear what the primary focus is. So always go back to that. Things that you're seeing, are those things tied to the primary focus? And then also, sorry about that. Are you looking at the main idea, or a statement that supports or proves the main idea. Those are important distinctions. There's a tendency to want to have everything that's tied to the main idea highlighted. No. Just stick with writing down or highlighting the main ideas. Any statements that support that main idea or prove that main idea, again, those are important. They help you trust that you can believe the information that you're being given. But that's not information you're going to need to be able to find immediately. You're most likely not going to have to find those proofs or find that support. Instead, what you're going to need to find is that main idea. You're going to need to find that and jump to that. So you want to use your notes to help you find those main ideas and recall what they are. You want to use your highlights to be able to find those in a dense text, right? Now, if you are somebody that has a difficult time dealing with identifying main ideas, I do have a link on the document on here. And by the way, if I didn't mention before, and I don't think I did, but this document that I'm showing on here is linked underneath the video. I have this hot linked in there. This is a very good resource for working through identifying main idea. It's good practice. All of us fall out of practice with that stuff. It's good to kind of keep your mind sharp with that. So I recommend making use of it just because of that. But that is our basic run through of what's important with taking notes and highlighting as a general concept. The second part of this will be focusing on how we can approach highlighting